All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 69 today. Uh,
Third
do
attempt at it.
do we have free will? Check us out at mikeandmauricemindescape.com, patreon.com/ Mike and Maurice. I just want to say we were trying to get an episode in with the author of the Cosmic Hologram, Jude Currivan, but we were having technical difficulties with the Google Hangouts, with her being over in the UK. So we're going to try again with her probably sometime in July when she's in the States and see if we can get a better connection. But we apologize for anybody that was jumping in on that session because we had really bad connection, so we had to back out of there.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
shame. I was really looking forward to that one, but you
yeah,
gotta.
check out her book, The Cosmic Hologram. I read it. It's awesome. Anybody that likes theories of everything or likes to ponder, the bigger picture, it's definitely worth a read. She has an amazing resume and background. So, um,
Well, that'll give me some time to read that bad boy.
yeah, Maurice is going to read his
If I
first book.
start
So,
today, it'll probably take me
yeah,
till then to get it done. So,
have your gecko read it to you,
Mr. Gordon.
Gordon. So yeah,
Yeah,
so we decided to still go live, and here we are. So we're gonna do a little something on free will here. What do you think? Do you think we have free will, or do you think
yeah, I
that?
do. I do. I do.
So you don't think our path is determined in any way?
Mm, think. Yeah, I think that we choose our own destiny. I believe that. I mean, the factors of you growing up in your environment, your childhood, your parents, all that kind of thing influences it. One thing leads to another, but I think ultimately you can make the decision one way or another.
So yeah, there's obviously the argument is free will versus determinism. Free will is yes, the idea of randomness that we're just making instinct decisions and stuff that isn't predetermined. And the argument for determinism is that everything you've done, every thought, every action, everything that you've encountered has brought you to this point in this moment in time. And everything you do there on out is, you know, part of that chain.
So are they
Um,
saying that you're being manipulated by an outer force, or
well, in a way, because let's say you get, you walk in the kitchen and you get burned. Well, you know, the next time you do that, you'll have the idea that you got burned, and that's a very rudimentary way of saying it, but just that every action, every thought, everything has pushed you in a direction. So like us having this conversation right now, the next thought you have is because of everything that's happened in your life to that point,
right?
plus what we just talked about. So yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it's external, it's internal, it's everything. It's a combination of everything.
So everybody that's going to be born and their whole lives are already determined for them.
Well, until that, yeah, until that point, of like them living. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not predicting. Well, you could predict the future if you had enough information. I think not maybe exactly, but we'll talk about that in a second. But I think who is it? Sam Harris is, which I'm not necessarily a fan of. I think he's a
Uh-huh.
smart guy, but he's a huge fan of um, determinism, that idea. And this is an ongoing debate. I mean, this goes back to ancient philosophers. Is this all preordained, or is this something that you know we have control over?
I
Y-
I think the fact that that how big art is a big clue to that, because the art is just being created. I don't know. I don't think the art's being controlled. Yes, your your life is going to determine what you paint, but don't you have the control to create anything you want?
well, but see, this is where it gets great crazy. Is just that, but that's the argument, is that everything you've experienced to that point is what's making you create that art, or like what's coming
Yeah,
out in
okay,
that
I
art.
understand
So
more. Yeah. Sorry, my mind gets a little twisted kind of thinking about it. I can see how this is very
but then you have people
confusing.
like you know, Rudolf Steiner, different
Right, right.
philosophers that would talk about so like free will. Um, if you believe in like karma and stuff, like the balance of forces and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I do to
And
a
if you
degree.
believe that there's a creator that
And I do.
we must have free will
Right.
because
That was the point I was getting at with the art thing. It's like
well, no,
free
no,
will.
but let me explain. So, if there was a creator, we must have free will, or else the God would be a bad God because everybody would be constantly being punished. Like we're
Right,
constantly
right.
like life's hard. It's not easy. Every decision we make has some sort of opposite thing happening, and then so when you look at it from that point of view, like if you believe in a creator, you believe in a God, then and karma is real and all that stuff, then you must believe that we have free will because otherwise the God, well, then
Because
the
no,
God
I
could
see
be a
what you're
bad
saying.
God, so
Because
or a bad creator.
why would there be rape and murder and all that shit happening if that wasn't based on the human's free will rather than it was based on someone's interject plan? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's why and that's the same. I don't know. The art argument's kind of hard because then you can say, oh well, this led to this, and then this led to the guy painting or whatever. But
I think there's some like, I don't believe necessarily in determinism, but I think that there's something in there that's kind of part of the element, if that makes sense. So like when you think of something or you experience, like let's say you were on the internet last night and you saw something about free will, or whatever.
mhm.
Let's just say I did. And then today, you know, this happens and we can't do the episode that we were going to do.
Right, right,
Um, the suggestive part of my subconscious is like, oh, let's do free will, like so,
yeah,
so in that regard, is it just part of is it my subconscious like holding on to certain things and then releasing them when necessary kind of a thing, so I
yeah. I
believe that
think
there.
that's how a creative brain ultimately works. I watched this documentary on Netflix, and like I'm a comedy writer, so all the shows I've ever watched, Fresh Prince when I was a kid, Saved by the Bell, whatever I mean, whatever,
You
how
got your
good or
Fresh
bad.
Prince, you got your Saved by the Bells.
But seriously, however good or bad those are, and then listening to Howard Stern all the time, like you build up a bank of not necessarily jokes, but just like the way that people have talked or the way that people have, you know, gotten ideas out, and then when you think of something, it's like a connection I don't know. It's hard for me to really put this down because it's very heavy, if you will. But you think of something, and your mind's making connections all the way back, and that's how you formulate new ideas almost, if that makes any sense.
Well, and that's a great point too. Is there new ideas or is it just a bunch of people regurgitating other people's stuff and mannerisms and um like think about that cuz
Yeah,
a lot of times when you're having a conversation with people whether they're joking around or whatever, they'll like quote lines of movies,
exactly.
they'll like you just said take jokes from other people or
Well, it's not
it's
necessarily jokes, but
it's very rare and I do recognize it, but when I'm in the world, if I meet somebody that's truly unique or has like an interesting perspective or um there's something, like I can tell that about them if that makes sense,
uh-huh.
like I meet a lot of people, doing my day to day, my day job where, they're just run of the mill people, There's nothing wrong with that either, but it's just like, oh, this is what this person does. You can kind of, project their life. And even when somebody's like, very regimented, like, you are in certain ways and then you're not, like, I know kinda your like, certain things that you do are very regimented, and then there's certain things that you don't, so, like,
Mhm.
when I look at somebody that's, like, super regimented, like, they wake up at every day at 8 o'clock, they drink a cup of coffee, they go work out, they go to
Right.
work, and then they come home, and then they make dinner, and then, it's this cycle. When you do that kinda stuff, it makes things very easy to, like, predict, so, like, in that sense, you could make the argument for determinism if I were looking at somebody from like a third party perspective. Like if I was looking at somebody doing their daily routine, I could probably, if you gave me like a week of them doing it, I could probably predict some of the stuff, So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of it's almost like what these psychics play into. If they know like almost general human traits, so they can kind of predict either what's happened in your life or what's going to happen in your life, and that they give you a general. a generalization, and they're often right because people pay these people money. So,
Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, I think that that whole thing is a whole 'nother subject, but,
but it's kind of the same thing where they're
no,
seeing
I
patterns
know,
of
but I
people.
think that's more like a lot of those people. I'd say 90, like maybe I think there might be 1% or 2% of those people
Yeah,
that have some sort of legitimate like intuition or cognition,
right, right.
precognition, something like that. But then there's also the charlatans, and the charlatans will look up your history, your family history, look at some sort of information on you with the internet now. You can look up anybody's stuff, and oh, you had an aunt. Oh, did she die? What's her name?
Well, dude,
This,
that's crazy you say aunt because one of our great aunts actually, our grandmother was telling me a story where she would give readings to people, and you had to be a certain age. I think you had to be 18. And when Mimi first married our grandfather, she finally was of age and she got a reading, and the lady told her, "You're gonna move to." I think they moved down. I can't remember where they moved, but they moved somewhere. And the lady said that you're gonna meet. Our aunt said you're gonna meet you're gonna meet a business partner and you're gonna start a business. You're gonna become very successful. Have you ever heard that story?
no.
So I don't know. I mean, it's a little off subject, but that might be
No,
that. It's that
I
old
haven't.
Irish. These old Irish people, they have some
Well, I
weird
know, yeah,
psychic
what's her
powers.
grandmother or something used to read, like,
Or that's who it
teacups
was.
or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
So
That's who it was.
so, do I believe in that stuff? I don't know. I think it's kinda like,
Hey,
well, I'm not saying I don't, but I don't, I haven't looked into it enough, and a lot of times when I look into these things, they end up being some sort of way to not necessarily debunk it, but,
how'd she guess it then, bro?
well, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, okay, so for instance, this is for me. The only true magic, or like, I've had some mystical moments in life, like we've talked about it on the
Right.
synchronicity episode, like
Synchronicities. Yep.
weird things like that. But like the real like magic, or seeing something or experiencing something that was metaphysical or not of this reality,
Yeah.
has only happened,
In your mind.
well, yeah, in psychedelics or in meditation. I mean, those are the only two that I can think of. I mean,
Well,
look,
you're
I'm a
alternating your vibration is essentially what's going on. So,
right, but what I'm saying is, I mean, have you experienced something in your, like, rational daily reality mind?
well, like I said, that light flicking, but is it based on a hard wire? Or is my friend actually communicating to me? I don't know. That's where I'm saying the mind comes into play because it'll force you to believe. If you saw like a bear standing in the woods, you thought it was Bigfoot. You're gonna convince yourself that that was Bigfoot. You
Right.
know.
Yeah,
So
I
I don't
mean,
know.
that's the tough one. I mean, for you, I think only you could answer that because it's through your consciousness. Like, I can't.
Right. Like I saw a light flicker when I was really thinking hard about my buddy who passed away. Um, there's definitely hard evidence to prove that it was a
And that
material.
light wasn't hadn't flickered previously at all, or
Not no, I mean it started flickering after his passing.
yeah, but what I'm saying is when it was doing it, it's not something that would happen regularly. Like, I think about those
No,
things.
it
So if I,
happens. It happens at periodically, sporadically, if you will.
So
So
that one, I don't know.
it
That's a
has
tough.
happened when I wasn't thinking about him, but it's also happened when I was thinking about him.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you
I
would
don't know.
have to. I mean,
Call me an asshole. I don't.
for me to I'd have to see how much this thing flickers, and I'd have to do
It's
some
not much,
scientific
bro. It's
work on
probably
it,
in my
bro.
head. It's all in my head, man. But
It's not. I think what was more interesting was the dreams that you were having after. Like, I think that's more interesting than this light flickering thing. I'm not saying that the light flickering thing didn't have any sort of
right,
meaning
right.
or anything like that, but I'm just saying that your story about the dreams and what was going on in the dreams sounds a little bit weirder, a little bit more tangible in terms of, you know,
Yeah, kind of
what else.
tapping into that other world.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like this is a huge, I think, debate, and I think that the problem is that we don't really have a full grasp on consciousness. I mean,
Not at
the
all.
most, yeah, I mean, the most plausible materialistic one, as we've talked about, is like Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose with the microtubules, which are these neuron, the way that they carry messages through the brain, and there's
Uh-huh.
two types, lattice A, lattice B, and the one type is more complex, and that's why our brain is so complex. But I mean, that's never been proven and retested and all that stuff. So
Well, you know what? It's actually a pretty interesting thing if you bring it to the animal realm, because do animals have free will? Because they all seem to follow. There's not like the bad animal in town, you know. There's not like, I don't know.
right.
It's weird. It's weird. There's not like the funny animal and the criminal animal. They all follow kind of the same.
I mean, dude, have
I
you
don't
been
know.
on
I don't.
YouTube?
I
There's
don't.
funny animals, bro. Okay.
Let's whoa, bro.
But I think that I don't know, that's a good point. And actually there's a lot of people that think about this kind of thing. There's a lot of philosophers that talk about how we're different than animals, but they have like a more primitive version of
Yeah.
consciousness where it
Uh-huh.
is more determined based on, like I don't even know, like more of the, reptilian or, they're
Well,
just
yes, it's
they're
physically
reacting.
in
It's
their
all
brain.
it's all instinctual. It's not
Right,
really
right.
there's
They
no
see something to eat, they eat.
right,
Us, we can see something to eat and say, "No, wait a minute, don't eat."
right,
We also can see something to eat and say, "Oh, let's take this thing and do all kinds of stuff to it, cook it,
right.
salt it, this and that." To them, they see food, they eat. So that's the basis of all this brain. I gotta give you this documentary.
Yeah,
I gotta show
I'll
you
check it
this. It's
out. I
pretty
love
cool because it just
documentaries.
shows how like people are creative. But you know what? There's a little like layer of bullshit all to it. So it always comes back to this material where I don't know, because I'm kind of a proponent of, if you can get your mind into a certain area, you can receive maybe not messages, but these ideas, which I guess are messages.
Yeah,
You know, I think that's kind of a cool outlook, that something's propelling the human race, where it's implementing ideas in some weird way where any artist can feel it. You know, some say it's I don't know. It's like the flow state, if you
right,
will. You know, you clear your mind, and then the ideas come in. Where are they coming from? Is it you creating them in your brain? Is it being an outside force? I don't know.
right. Well, and back to the animal thing, I think that it's super interesting to think about because, I mean, we don't know what animals are thinking. We don't know exactly what's going on.
Right. It's
And
pretty
like,
clear that dogs are feeling sad and stuff.
well,
So
dogs is a weird one too. I feel like dogs are evolving too. Like there was a video there. Well, no, seriously, I was watching this video. I mean, everything's evolving,
well,
but
they
I
evolve. Look
mean,
at
like,
the
I
fucking
mean, like
wolf.
they're evolving quicker because we've
Right.
domesticated them. So something that we're doing and interacting with them is causing them to, I think, to evolve faster than other things. Like for instance, I was watching this video on YouTube. This dog um brought like a leaf into like a veterinary office and like put it up because he saw somebody like handing them money and they gave him something back.
Holy
So
shit.
the dog saw that and started giving these people at this office leaves and they would give him a treat. So he'd come
Oh
back
my.
every day and give him a
Yeah.
leaf. So it's like is there's something going on there. I think dogs are super intelligent. I personally, have had dogs my whole life, but I have a cat now, and even my cat, I mean, I feel like there's, I'll be like in my head, I'll be like, don't do that. And like most cats will do what you don't want them to do, but for some reason, I have a connection with my cat where I feel like she knows what's going on, kind of a thing sometimes. And it could just be me thinking that, but I do think that animals
No, they perceive stuff. They know
there,
what's going
there's an
on. They do
intelligence
what they
there, and
do.
I think it's weird to think about, but I think maybe our influence of having a domestic animal does have some sort of impact on their intelligence, and which what does that mean then? Does that mean that we are different? So like that's what I question when it comes to free will and determinism is also things like we're so much more advanced than anything else,
Right,
like you
right,
said, like we not only can we, look at something like you said, an animal's just going to eat based on the fact that it's hungry and something's there. We can look at that animal and be like, I'm not going to eat that. It's not right to eat that. It would make me feel bad to eat that. It'd
right. And
make
that's
me feel bad to kill that. Like we have a moral compass. We have this moral,
Well, that's what a lot of these vegetarians are saying. They're like, you know better. So yes, we are carnivorous, but we know we can get these nutrients from something else. So why are we actually going to kill, living organisms to to achieve those proteins.
I mean, the other school of thought those too is like part of our evolutionary, um, you know, whatever you wanna call it, our evolutionary boom of how we got doubling, tripling the brain size
Uh,
was eating this cooked meat that was cooked on the fire, the proteins and all
a
that.
theory, a theory.
No, it is a theory. It's just like, and it could be a lot of things. It could have been the use of tools and weapons and also, the way we hunted, and it could be psychedelics too. There could be a lot of, different aspects to that, but I think
Could
that
have been all of them. Who the fuck knows?
it could have been all of them. But the whole, meat thing, it's weird to think about because it has played a huge role in our evolution, but is like anything else, is it, I don't know. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that we still need meat in our diet. I think that I like eating like vegetarian meals, like I'd say half the week I'm eating all vegetarian stuff and the other half there's some meat involved. So it's a little
Tearing into that flesh.
yeah, so it's a little bit of both, but I think that I've definitely had lost a taste for more of the meat. I used to eat a lot of meat, but I
Well,
think
here's another interesting thing. A lot of mollusks are actually less complex creatures than plants. These new studies are coming out. So like,
really,
yeah, like like mussels or clams or oysters and stuff. Because everything's alive. So what to what level do we? I get it. Pigs are very close to humans. Any mammal
yeah, I
obviously
mean,
is very
it
close to
depends though, because
humans.
I think if you look at the nautilus, which is a mollusk, is like one of the most complex. That's what mathematicians study its shell because it's the golden ratio. So like there are things.
Yeah,
So I'm not saying that that has to do with consciousness necessarily. It's more
no,
like the
but plants are
structure.
alive too. So
Plants
what
have
are
a
you gonna do?
certain Whitney was telling me about some book where I forget what it was called, but how plants emit this thing when they're being harvested and chopped down, and it's almost like a hormone type thing for a plant where it's not necessarily the best thing for you to eat either. Like they have some sort
Oh,
of
that's interesting.
sentience too, so
See,
um,
it's interesting because like take a plant like cannabis where you could grow it forever in one state. I mean, a lot of plants are like this where you have to put them into a different light cycle for them to actually flower,
right.
or even like basil or something like that. So like if you
Basil, get the fuck out of here.
no, well, so you're telling me that these things emit like bad gases when they're killed. So there's something
Um,
sour happening when you're killing these things. Is what you're saying.
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends. Because I think also, you look at like some plants are connected. If you're cutting down a bunch of arugula, there's probably some sort of connection between all of those little, like they're all like little subsets of the same thing.
Right.
Or if it's a
But what's the
carrot, it's one thing.
What's the more ethical approach though? If you take a plant and keep it in a vegetative state for its whole life, and it would probably live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, or you actually let it go to fruition and have it go through its regular life cycle where it would bear fruit and then become dead.
Well, like you were saying, talking about cannabis. Well, I think once it reaches its cycle, right? I mean, if you're saying that it flowers and then you cut it down after it's been flowered
Right.
for a while,
Well, it's
would
gonna die. It's gonna die at some
exactly.
point. So
So I think that, might be the same thing as like putting your dog down or something along those
right,
lines.
right. Well, everything
Not
must
in the sense
die.
psychologically, but I just mean
Yeah.
from, that standpoint. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, and like I said, I think that we're so different too. Like we create things that create things that create things. Like you can kind of go on forever with that at this point with AI and machine learning and different stuff that the closest thing to us are animals like, chimpanzees or different primates using sticks to get honey, to get bees, to get ants. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of the closest thing. And even that's not really that close, right? I mean,
It's
for
close
like we're
thousands
because
of years
some people are
ago.
like, oh well, how come there's still chimpanzees and monkeys if we evolved? Well, we weren't that. We were a
Right, right.
different we were a
Yeah.
different branch of that,
Yeah.
and that we branched off. I think initially
And it kept
we were
splintering. The main
well,
stone was still there, but
right.
it kept
We were
changing
initially some sort
gradually.
of tree shrew, I believe, initially that grew into this primate that, was eating fruit that the glucose from the fruit was giving us different,
Uh-huh.
uh, you know, was helping our brain
Nutrients.
grow. Yeah, different
Yeah.
nutrients. So in that regard, like I said, I look at it and I think that we're just so different, and it's so weird that that we're this anomaly on this planet. Um, it's just really weird to think about that. Even if let's just say all this was an accident, dumb Earth theory, this is all just some sort of cosmic joke. Not a
Yeah.
joke, but we're just all here by chance. Um, it's still weird to think about that we've gotten to this point, but nothing else has that we know of.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but
So,
but I think the time that we've been to this point is relatively small in the grand scheme of things. So
well, even if you go back to like the dinosaurs when they were roaming the earth and controlling the earth and everything, I mean,
yeah,
they had peon brains. They weren't.
yeah.
I mean, we don't know. Obviously, there's no way to go
Peon.
back and be like they were thinking this. They're freaking dinosaurs. So,
Just ask
um,
Goldblum, bro.
but I think that, the research will show that it's kind of like, well, we know dinosaurs evolved into birds, or birds are the descendants of dinosaurs. So, I think
Hmm.
it's probably more based off that reptilian instinctual kind of like what animals are. So that's how I would think about that. But yeah, it's just we're living in a weird time too, because not only are we so advanced in creating this technology, but we're now creating things that we're trying to make like copies of ourselves, with AI.
Yeah.
We're trying to, what is that?
We're
Like,
trying to figure out how to live forever
well,
in this
that
material world.
do
That's
you
what's
do we want to live in the material world forever? Sometimes I
well,
think
I'm
too,
just a material girl living in this material world.
um,
No, why the fuck do you want to live in this in pain and all like you remember watching those vampire movies? And you'd be like,
yeah,
"Yeah, that'd be cool to live forever until become 30 and friends die and relatives die and you're just like, this isn't that cool. I don't want to live forever."
right. I mean, do you think though that I don't know. I think about it sometimes and I think that it would almost be a curse to live for a super long time or live forever.
Oh
But
yeah. Think
and
about
then
that.
and the argument for, let's say, a creator would be that we there's probably something else then, right? Like there's probably
Uh-huh.
some metaphysical realm, or our energy gets transferred to some sort of other energy in a realm or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Um, if that's the case, you would be stuck here. This would be hell because you would be stuck here and it's not all peaches and cream.
Or there is nothing and it's always a repetitive cycle, so reincarnation theory.
Well, that's the weird thing too is reincarnation. That's a weird one. Because you look at, like, oh, for
I
instance,
used to think it was so stupid and now I
Ri
realize
I did too, but then you look at, like, some of the Dorothy Eady, and then there's this little boy for the
yeah,
first
I've
5
seen
years
all
of
that
his
stuff.
life with the stuff with he was shot down over the
Yep.
Pacific in World War II, that one,
Mhm.
that's pretty compelling stuff. So there's these instances. Now, if the people were related, like, let's say the grandkid was having flashbacks of the grandpa's life, I could almost see some sort of genetic thing happening where
Yeah,
something was
DNA
encoded in,
memory.
yeah, something was encoded in the genes or the DNA, and that kid was having these thoughts or these experiences through the DNA, but none of these people are related that are having these things. So the people
Yeah.
that are coming back are completely different people on different sides of the earth, experiencing
Uh-huh.
a past life. So, um and there are woo-woo ones for sure, but I think if you really
Well,
look into it.
what about that Edgar Allan Poe one? That's one of the biggest mysteries I think of all time. That story you wrote
Oh,
about
yeah.
about the guys that were they lost at sea and they ate each other, and then hundreds of years later, the exact same fucking thing happens. The
Do you think
dudes
it's
get left.
possible that he read that there was a story about that happening and he wrote about that, or no?
How would it? How would it? How would the actual events occur hundreds of years later with the
No, but
same names?
right. But what I'm saying is,
It would have been the guys
do you
that
think
the
those
guys
yeah,
that reenacted it would have had to read the story. I don't think
that's what I'm
so.
saying. Do you think the guys that ate the guy read Edgar Allan Poe?
To have your actual names be that and not change you'd have to be a massive psychopath. And again, we've seen this over time. There's some fucked up people, but you'd have to change your name. You'd have to get on a boat with dudes of the same name.
I'm getting in my boat and I'm
I'm
going up
going
reef.
upriver. I'm getting in my boat. I'm going to
That's the
sea.
classic, that Street Fighter speech is just John Claude just
I
all
actually think it's good. I mean,
John
it's
Claude
funny.
all coked up will get
I
you.
get
You watch that
I get
before a
fucked
hockey
up.
game or something, you're gonna get lit up,
Freaking
dude.
Nagaham.
Shout out to John Claude Van Johnson.
John Claude, if you want to come on this podcast, we would love to have you. That would be amazing.
You can all go home.
But
But yeah,
I don't even
so
remember what we're talking about.
no, but we were just talking about
Oh yeah. The mystery of Edgar Allan Poe.
right. So that one, I don't know. That is weird. I've read that too. Could those people have read the story and be like, "Hey, that's my name. Let's, you know,
Well, let's eat.
yeah."
Let's
I
eat
don't know.
human tonight on a boat. But they got
Well, I don't know
stranded.
how prevalent his work was, if everybody knew it, and, I'd have
Yeah,
to go back and look at, all those different, things and see, if everybody was reading it in school or if it was something that was very prevalent, I could see some sicko being like, "Oh, this fits perfectly. Let's do this." It's
yeah.
still gruesome. It would have to be like 1 in a million too, because you would have to get somebody not only with the same name, but somebody that's like you said, like a
It's
psychopath or a sicko, somebody that's actually able to carry that out.
and
Um,
maybe just in 1 in a million
yeah,
times
what's the
something
name of
like
that
this
thing
happens.
too, so people can
I'm
check
looking
it
right
out?
now. It's called Edgar Allan Erie Richard Parker
Yeah,
is the name of the
but what's the
story.
person's name? It's like something Pym or
Uh what do you mean?
what's the guy's
Richard
name?
Parker is the guy,
Oh, it was
yeah.
Richard Parker. I thought it was
Yeah.
something. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. But yeah, the Richard Parker. Um, yeah, I mean
So is
it's
he tapping into something? Like that can bring us back to our point. Is that free will? Is he coming up with that story? And I don't know. Maybe it doesn't come back to our point because this shit's fucking. My mind is just exploded, bro.
See, most people don't like to think about this because everybody loves the idea, whether
They
it's an
like the
illusion,
routine.
or not, of free will. Like we want to know that what we're choosing is our own choice. Like if you
Yeah.
look at um, like little kids, you tell them to don't do something. Well, they want to do something the
Right.
opposite. Like even adults for that matter the same way. We live in a
Yeah.
culture where nobody wants to be told what to do, so they're going to do the opposite thing at some point to prove. So I wonder what that is, if that's some sort of, you know, psychological um defense of free will. Like, is that something your brain's telling you to do to keep the illusion of free will, or is it just something that's like a cognitive behavioral thing? I don't know.
Yeah. It's so heady to even consider going deep into this realm. Like look where it took us, man. It took us all the way to Poe.
uh
Seriously though, because it goes like you said, we started talking about choices on eating and then the animals and this.
right. Well, okay, so here's another way to think about it. We've talked about this before too. Would be like Simone Laplace, who was a French philosopher and scientist. Um, he had something called, Laplace's billiard shot, which is that he said if you were given all the geometry, all the physics, all the dimensions and everything,
Hmm.
you could tell where all the balls were going to land off a break,
Yeah, yeah,
in a game
yeah.
of pool. So if that's the case, let's say there is a creator. When people say he's omnipresent, I'm omniscient,
Not omnipotent.
yeah, I'm omnipotent. Um, if that was the case, that the creator would have all those tools and would know, like when people say God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, he knows everything that's going to happen, that has happened, that will happen. If you had all the tools, you you could be God, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, like for instance, if we let's just say
I
we
don't
had a
think he does know what's gonna happen though.
but
That's the
let's
whole
just
thing.
but okay, so well, that's a whole different, hold on to that. So let's just say we have the universe. Now we have all the rules of the universe. We know what dark energy is, we know what dark matter is, we know how to calculate all these things, we know how to measure all these things. Let's just say that's the case.
Hmm.
If there's somebody that was given all the information, then they would be able to tell you what you were gonna do next. So in that regard, you would not have free will because somebody would be able to tell based on everything that you've experienced and the laws and everything that you were gonna, lift your hand next or whatever the case may be. So that's the idea of that. Now, so what you're saying is if there is a creator, you don't think that that creator, you know, you don't think that creator knows what's gonna happen in the future? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
think about it like this: the creator is the painter, and we're the paint, but he just lets us paint everything. He lets us paint our own picture. I guess he wouldn't be the painter. He just creates all the material and drops it down because
Okay.
he wants to see what is created too. You know, he wants
Right.
that's the whole point of the creation is to see what comes out of it.
Right.
So he wants to see like maybe he didn't even create humans. Maybe we just evolved from something that was implemented eons ago.
Right.
Maybe a spore. That's why that guy's idea wasn't isn't that crazy. It's like there could have been one little microscopic little organism or something
Well, that's
planted,
actually
and
a
then you see what
pretty
happens over time.
that's actually a pretty I mean, panspermia and directed panspermia, I think his take was specifically fungi hitching a ride. We're talking about our last guest on our last episode of Ancient Psychedelics and the Mushroom, with Joshua. Um, his theory was that we all can come from life, which was fungus or mushroom spores that connected a ride on a comet. Um, which I mean, other people have thought about that and theorized on that. Like I said, panspermia, directed panspermia. Carl Sagan was a huge proponent of that for a long time. Is it a crazy idea? No, no, I don't think anything's a crazy idea. You see these papers this last year coming out about how possibly octopi could have hitched a ride, same thing, on some sort of, you know,
Right.
cosmic debris and landed here and started to, because they're genetically so different, supposedly.
Right.
Um, so like I said, that's not a crazy idea. But back to the
These
creator.
pilots, I mean, that's just that actually supports the fact because people are like, oh, what about cancer? What about this? Like, dude, this guy, or we'll call him this guy, the
Hey,
creator.
this fucking guy over here.
He doesn't know what any of that is. All he did was put something in play, and then now it's gotten to such a level. Of course, there's going to be genetic mutations. That's just a part of the evolution of whatever this is.
Well, to go back actually, so we like we said at the beginning, we were gonna have Jude Curvin on. We had author of the Cosmic Hologram, and we were having technical difficulties, so we're gonna get to that in future. But part of her premise of her book and research about like entropy is normally that um we started off in a very organized, condensed way, and then
Uh
the
huh.
Big Bang happens, and then everything gets shot out, and everything's in disorder. Her theory reverses it in that everything that got shot out is actually getting more complex and developing more systems. And if you look at life on our planet, that's actually true in the sense
Right.
that and is that happening in more places or is that just specific to us? I don't know, but um you'd have to look at the whole picture. But for our planet specifically, that is the case that these complex systems are developing more and more and more and more. Even our lives are getting more and more complex, like where is it headed kind of a thing.
Right.
So
I mean,
that's an
given the right material in the right atmosphere, and you don't know what's gonna occur.
right.
So
I mean, I like I said, I think that when you look at, do we have free will? Is everything determined? I think it's possible to maybe have both. I think that there possibly could be a creative source that knows what's going to happen, that has all the tools. Maybe they're not always looking at the bigger picture in the sense that everything, but maybe they have the ability to look into the future, the ability to know what's going to happen if they applied themselves to want to know, like that
uh-huh.
kind of a thing. Um, but I also think it's possible that we have free will in the sense that, like I said before, somebody tells you don't do something, you do it, or you do what they say. In that regard, those are two completely different things. Or the other aspect of it would be, like I said, if there is a creator and a lot of this stuff's predicated on if, what, possibly, so it's lots of speculation, but consciousness is speculation at this point. So I think that we're good. Um, but this idea that um, if there is a God, then he must be a good God. Um, if like karma's real and like the balancing of nature kind of a thing, because it would be a bad God if it wasn't. If everything was determined, we would be put through pain and suffering and everything for no reason. Which what's the point of that? You know.
Yeah. Let me chew on that.
But I mean, it's weird to think about, and most people don't think about it. Like I said, most people just go throughout their day, do their thing,
Dude,
go
to
through.
even talk about it, you gotta kinda have some kinda grasp on shit because,
Well, I think
you're really talking about
but I think it's
something
honest.
heavy.
It's being honest with yourself too.
Right.
Like I said, people don't want to face things that make them question. Like
Yeah.
that's why we do this podcast. That's why I think about this stuff all day long. Maybe not all day long, but for the most part, if I have a free second, I'm philosophizing, theorizing, thinking about this kind of stuff, researching stuff. So for me, it's this ever present, thing staring me in the face. But for most people, they always tuck it, even if I love my wife. We have these kind of weird conversations sometimes, but she doesn't
Yeah.
love having them. She's not
Yeah.
like me in that sense. Like she's not dying to talk about origins or life. So I think it's
You
comes
gotta be in the
down.
right state of mind, you gotta be in the right place
Even
in
if
your
you're in the
life.
right state of mind, there's just type of people that don't like talking about it for whatever reason. They have their beliefs of what, reality or what they think is their reality, and they don't, you know, there's no reason to question that. They enjoy their life or,
Yeah.
you know, but I don't know. I can't not think
I don't
about it.
think this topic is that integral. You don't have to think about. I mean, because like take my mom for example. She doesn't need to think does she have free will or not. She's a good lady. She's living her life. This isn't like I don't know. I wish you would get into some of the other stuff that we talk about, but the free will one, it's cool to think about, but I don't think it's a mandatory one. You need to really investigate too hard. Just live your life good, and
But it is a polarizing thing because
it
by
is.
saying,
But
but
what is
if
it
you
gonna
were to,
make a
if
difference if you know who's fucking
but what I'm
controlling
saying,
you? Or not?
but what I'm saying is, if you were to say determinism is real, then that would probably, I mean, like I said, I think you're able to believe in both free will and determinism in a
I
certain
think
way.
yeah, I think it's a combination of both, to be honest.
But I also think that it's polarizing in the sense that like people that are hardcore religious or hardcore, what, like even the opposite way. So like you have your hardcore atheists or your hardcore people that don't believe in any sort of creator.
Mhm.
Those people will always argue evolution, determinism, those kinds of things. But I think it's
Right.
possible to believe in both things. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the deeply religious people that will say we do have free will and God's given us that free will, and that
Yeah.
our job is to do the most moral things and be our best versions of ourselves with that free will. So like
Uh-huh.
so they would be offended by the idea that this is all just some predetermined
Yeah, you're right.
cyclical thing. So
Uh-huh.
I think that a lot of people are open minded nowadays, but there's also still tons of people that aren't. I mean, you go on Facebook, Reddit, whatever, there's cool people on there, but then there's also people that, one or two comments that are always going to tickle your taint, or
Whoa.
get you all up in a roar. So,
Yeah. Usually when tickling my taint, I get really excited in a
yeah,
good way.
because you're a real sick bastard.
So yeah,
Um,
we'll end on that, and
no, I'll tell you when
uh,
it ends, and we're going for
and,
another 20 minutes now that you said no,
no, I
but
just wanted to end on the word taint.
yeah, I'm sure you did. You sick fuck. But no, any like any more thoughts on it? Because we can end there. I think we covered it for the most part. I think it's just a complex topic that maybe we'll try and get somebody, a professional that you know
Yeah. I like
more.
that. I like what you're saying about the religion, though. We could have touched on that a little more, but yeah. I mean, if you like you said, if you do believe in a religion, well, especially Christianity, you think that you have the free will. So
Well, I will say though, so like determinism. if I, eat a handful of psilocybin mushrooms right now,
Uh-huh.
is my mind going to experience some sort of determined reality? In that sense, I don't think so because it's something completely different
Yeah,
than
it's gonna melt, I
rea
know that.
it's something completely different than everyday reality. So in that
Right.
sense, like I said, I think I believe in both, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think partly our path is determined, but we also have the choice to alter things or alter the path or, you know, change the outcome a little bit. It might not be a ton, but it's like a leaf blowing in the breeze.
Or a dog paying with a leaf. That's a sweet story, I like that a lot.
Yeah, you could
Oh,
probably.
I wanted to add one more thing. That story, you were right. It's called, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of
Yeah, I mean,
Nantucket.
I knew I
Edgar
was
Allan
right,
Poe.
but
Yeah, yeah, my bad. My bad. Hey, I'm skimming through the stuff trying to get the info. It's hard. I'm trying to listen to you talk, skim the shit. My brain isn't that good, man.
it's all
I'm no
good.
young Jamie. I'm old Maury over here.
I got Tuesdays with Maurice over here.
Yeah. Hey, man. Don't. Whoa. Don't. You might get infringement laws.
Yeah, come at me, Mitch Album. We'll see what the fuck
Yeah.
happens,
We should
bro.
try and get him on, and I'll just ambush him.
Yeah.
Oh
Um.
man.
All right. So, like I said, we will have Jude Curvin on sometime in July. And sorry again to anybody that was watching when it cut out. And yeah, we
We'll
will
go from
see.
there.
We will be back on Friday with a special guest, TBD. And I think you'll enjoy this one. And it'll get goofy.
Mr. CBD.
CBGB.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks, folks. And we'll see you Friday.
Cheers.
Peace.